The scene opens in two timelines, the present and a memory from 10 years ago. Both moments pivot around a chance encounter between two people whose lives are destined to intertwine in unexpected ways. "Go on, Mengyu. You lost the dare." My boyfriend Fu Ran's voice echoes from the past, urging me to steal food from the quiet boy's lunch. I'm suddenly caught between two moments, my present self watching my younger self approach Susun's table, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what's to come. At 17, I was the privileged daughter of a government official, part of an exclusive circle of wealthy teens who treated our classmate Susun like an outsider. That day, I took a piece of pickled radish from his bowl, but something made me leave my chocolate bar beside his hand, a small act of kindness that would become our only interaction during our school years. I can still picture him walking with his head bowed so low, as if trying to disappear into the ground beneath his feet. Now, 10 years later, life has turned the tables completely. I'm standing at a modest sweet potato stall, no longer the radiant girl I once was. My father's imprisonment and my husband Fu Ran's abandonment have transformed me into the city's favorite topic of gossip. Meanwhile, that quiet boy who kept his head down has risen to become a powerful tech mogul. "These aren't just any sweet potatoes," I tell my customer wearing Hermes, trying to maintain my dignity as she buys them for her household staff. "They're golden sweet potatoes, baked by the chief's daughter herself." The irony isn't lost on me, how I've gone from feeding stray cats with street food in my wealthy days to now selling it to survive. Looking at those sweet potatoes brought back memories of my privileged past. Funny how I'd buy street food only to feed strays, never eating it myself. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? That's when Susun appeared before me, looking impeccable in his tailored suit and leather shoes. The contrast between us couldn't have been starker. He took me in, a homeless woman, to his private villa. There was nothing sinister about it, no hidden agenda. He simply offered shelter and helped me find respectable work, like extending a hand to a friend in need. I wanted desperately to repay his kindness, but didn't know how. Late at night, I'd often find him standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, cigarette between his pale fingers, bathed in moonlight. He looked so lonely. My heart ached to comfort him, to wrap my arms around him, but I felt I had no right. He wanted nothing from me. Perhaps he'd taken me in out of pity, just as I once took in stray animals. Then came the cancer diagnosis from overwork. Even in his hospital bed, frail and hollow-eyed, he remembered my birthday. "A princess's birthday must be ceremonial," he insisted, setting up candles with trembling hands. That nickname, Princess, became his favorite for me. His smile was strained but genuine as he whispered, "Happy birthday," so softly I had to lean close to hear. His eyes memorized my face as if it were the last time he'd see it. When his hand went limp in mine, I tasted grief, like rain-soaked earth, heavy and overwhelming. Through tears, I blew out those candles and made my wish. Please let me go back to being 17. And somehow, incredibly, it worked. I opened my eyes to find myself back in that school cafeteria, my wealthy friends urging me to torment the— If you're loving this emotional roller coaster, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps other romance fans find this story. Hit subscribe to catch more incredible love stories that will make you believe in destiny. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that true love can overcome any obstacle. Drop a comment below. Would you forgive someone if their family destroyed yours? Let me know what you think, and stick around. The ending of this story will leave you speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Could you let me— I stumbled over my words, emotion threatening to spill over as I looked at his thin face. I must have seemed crazy, so I collected myself and fell silent. Taking a piece of radish from his bowl, I put it in my mouth. It tasted like salty wax, nothing like the expensive meals I was used to. The cafeteria had become a theater, with us as the main attraction. Students stopped eating to watch, their whispers growing into loud discussions. The table in front of us was particularly noisy, their comments cutting through the air. "Look at Miss Meng, brave enough to mess with the cold genius," one voice rang out. Genius? Ha! In elementary school, they called him Disaster instead. You know why, right? Because of what happened to his parents. Before they could finish, I saw Susun's fists clench, veins prominent against his pale skin. Something in me snapped. I stood up sharply. "Didn't your parents teach you not to gossip about others?" I challenged them. Or maybe they did, but the lesson didn't stick? The girl I confronted retreated into mumbles. What's wrong with her? Wasn't she the one who used to mock him too? I felt my anger rising again, but then a cool touch on my hand stopped me. Susun, silently asking me to sit down. His face had returned to its usual calm mask. Once seated, I made a decision. Under everyone's watching eyes, the math lesson had already begun when I returned. I'd have to wait until after class to explain to Susun about the food. Though math was my least favorite subject, I forced myself to focus. In my past life, neglecting subjects like this had closed so many doors. I'd graduated from a mediocre college, married Fu Ran, and lived a life of dependence, first on my father, then on my husband. That's how people ruin themselves. When everything fell apart, my lack of skills and poor education left me with few options. That's how I ended up selling sweet potatoes. But now, given this second chance, I wouldn't waste it. I leaned forward, drinking in every word. After all, friends might leave, husbands might betray, but mathematics stays true. Math class felt like trying to decode an ancient language. My eyes wandered around the room until they found him, Susun, both stranger and familiar. He sat perfectly straight, intense focus on the blackboard, occasionally scratching calculations on his paper. He looked so different from the powerful man I knew he'd become, now just a thin, pale boy with a shadow of insecurity hanging over him like a cloud. "Mengyu, what are you staring at? Stand up and tell us." The math teacher's sharp voice caught me admiring Susun too obviously. I stood, wearing my boldest smile. I was looking at Susun. The classroom erupted into whispers while Susun kept working, though his ears turned a telling shade of pink. "Oh, really?" the teacher challenged, clearly annoyed by my poor math skills and now this disruption. "And what's so interesting about him that you can't pay attention to class?" "Because he's handsome," I declared simply. The class exploded into chaos. Of course, I was sent out. But being a government official's daughter had its perks. I ended up cooling off in the air-conditioned office instead of standing in the hallway. After class, I rushed to explain about the lunch incident. Susun kept his head down, still solving problems. "It's okay," he mumbled, barely looking up. I didn't think much of it. Relief flooded through me. He was surprisingly easy to talk to. Why had I always thought him so cold before? Seeing him absorbed in his work, I decided to make it quick. I placed my favorite chocolate beside his hand and bent down with a smile. "This is my favorite chocolate. It's for you." He glanced at it briefly. "Thanks, but I don't eat sweets." "Just try it. It's really good." Before I could stop myself, I'd unwrapped it and popped it into his mouth. My fingers brushed his lips, sending an electric current through my body. He froze, eyes wide with shock. I stood there, flustered as time seemed to stop. He'd even forgotten to chew. My face burning, but too committed to back down now, I managed to say, "Good, right? I didn't lie. I'll bring you some every day. That's a promise." Then I fled. After school, Fu Ran blocked my path home. "What's wrong with you today?" he demanded, arms crossed. "Why are you being so nice to that Jinx?" "I want to be nice to him." "What's it to you?" I challenged Fu Ran. He grabbed my shoulders roughly. Because of him, you've offended Pei Pei. Susun will be his next target in his games. My heart raced with anxiety. Is he insane? If Pei Pei has a problem, he should come after me instead. Fu Ran's grip tightened as he held my chin, his eyes dark. Mengyu, don't tell me you've fallen for that piece of trash. If I don't love him, I sneered, what makes you think I'd love someone like you? His rage exploded. He slammed me against the wall, forcing a kiss. Past memories flooded back, making bile rise in my throat. I shoved him away with all my strength and slapped him hard. What are you doing? I demanded. He trapped me between his arms. Wasn't that woman you saw just my sister? Aren't you just using Susun to make me jealous? Then I saw him, Susun, carrying a trash can toward the classroom. His eyes fell on us for just a moment before sliding away, continuing his path as if we were nothing but air. My chest tightened painfully. He must think I'd only approached him earlier to make Fu Ran jealous. I seized my chance, delivering a swift kick to Fu Ran's sensitive spot. As he doubled over, I spat, "If you're sick, see a doctor," and ran after Susun. Susun! I caught up, grabbing his sleeve. I don't like Fu Ran. He's awful. He forced himself on me just now. He kept walking, his long strides forcing me to jog alongside him. Miss Meng, I'm not interested in your romantic drama. No need to explain. He's not my boyfriend, I insisted, then added, well, his rejection felt like ice water down my spine. I stood there, the harsh sunset burning my eyes. Why were we always caught in these misunderstandings, always missing each other by inches? It's fine, I told myself. I'm still the official's daughter. What's one rejection? But when I followed him again, his anger finally broke through. Stop following me. Get lost. 10 years later, and it was just like before. The first and only time he'd ever spoken to me so harshly. I forced a smile through the pain. Well then, goodbye. See you tomorrow. As I turned away, tears threatened to spill. For days after, I left chocolates on his desk, only to watch them end up in the trash. Each discarded chocolate felt like a piece of my heart being thrown away. Then Pei Pei made his move, declaring Susun the target of his next game. The class turned against Susun during his duties as math class representative. They deliberately dropped their homework, forcing him to pick it up from the floor. I started helping him collect them, trying to ease his burden. Classmate Meng, he finally spoke when I placed the collected homework on his desk. I've resigned as class representative. Please stay away from me. The tiny flame of hope I'd been nurturing flickered out. Why? I whispered. He looked up, eyes cold as winter. Because I hate you. I don't remember how I made it back to my seat. The words echoed in my head all day. Even with this second chance, 10 years back in time, why was everything still going wrong? Then came an unexpected opportunity. Our class teacher called me to her office. My spirits lifted. Teacher Chen was known for being incorruptible, always returning the designer bags my mother sent her. But I knew better now. Everyone has their price. You just need to find the right currency. This time, when she tried to return the Chanel bag, I gently pushed it back toward her. That bag looks beautiful on you, Teacher Chen. I smiled, moving closer. You know, I heard your husband and child are in Jincheng. Wouldn't it be wonderful if his job could be transferred to Hangzhou? Her eyes sparkled with interest. I lowered my voice conspiratorially. My father has a close friend in Hangzhou's personnel department. After a thoughtful pause, Teacher Chen kept the bag. Your mother has excellent taste, she murmured. She worked quickly. Before the next bell, I was seated next to Susun, while Fu Ran was banished to the far corner of the room, seething but powerless. Under Teacher Chen's guidance, Susun had no choice but to become my math tutor, our past conflict swept aside by the machinery of adult manipulation. Though Susun taught without much enthusiasm, I approached our study sessions with fierce determination. This new chapter of my life was my chance to break free from dependence on others. But math was my nemesis. The subject drew a stark line between students like Su Sun, who effortlessly scored perfect marks, and strugglers like me who sometimes couldn't even reach double digits. I sat there, staring at what Su Sun called a giveaway question. His patience was wearing thin. "Old Wang explained this twice in class," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "And I've gone through it with you 3 times. If you still can't grasp it, maybe you should just give up on math." The way his eyes bore into me made my blood boil. I could practically hear him thinking, "Idiot." "Don't underestimate me, Su Sun," I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm going to solve this problem today, no matter what." Half an hour later, Su Sun returned to check on me. His face lit up with an unexpected smile, the first genuine one I'd ever seen from him. "You actually wrote the solution," he said, his eyes dancing with something close to pride. Time seemed to stop. My mind went completely blank, caught in the warmth of that rare smile. I must have stared too long because when our eyes met, I quickly looked away, heat rising to my cheeks. "They say pressure brings out the best in people," I mumbled. "Though maybe that doesn't apply to math." Su Sun ducked his head and laughed softly, the tips of his ears turning pink. Our moment was shattered by a crash. Fu Ran stood there, textbooks scattered at his feet. "Is his sense of humor really that pathetic, Mengyu?" he spat. "Is this why you left me?" His voice echoed through the library, drawing unwanted attention. I shot him an icy look. "What's wrong? Did they release you from the hospital too soon?" This only fueled his rage. The quiet library erupted with his outburst until Su Sun stepped in. "Fu, this is a study space. If you're not here to study, leave." "Study?" Fu Ran. I stood up slowly, my voice steady and sharp. 10 years of dedicated study will absolutely overcome 3 generations of handed-down privilege. "So you're choosing this nobody?" Fu Ran scoffed. "What I choose is none of your business," I retorted. "Or did you forget what happened last time? Want to make it permanent?" The mention of his previous injury made him flinch. "Mengyu, your parents will hear about this," he threatened, but his voice wavered as he retreated, his bravado crumbling with each step. I gathered the scattered books from the floor, trying to restore some semblance of calm to our study space. When Su Sun opened his mouth to speak, I rushed to explain, the words spilling out in a desperate stream. "About last time, you misunderstood. I wasn't using you to get back at Fu Ran. We're completely over. He was the desperate one who cornered me, who kissed me against my will. I almost reported him for harassment." My voice trembled with urgency. "Please, you have to believe me. I really didn't—" "I believe you," Su Sun cut in softly, his voice steady and sure. "Really, there's no need to explain. I believe you." His words washed over me like moonlight breaking through storm clouds, making everything shine brighter. But then Su Sun's brow furrowed slightly. "I just don't understand. Why do you treat Fu Ran with such hostility?" My mind flashed back to my previous life, being thrown out of my home, stripped and humiliated in the bitter snow by the man I'd loved from high school sweetheart to bride. A love that had nearly destroyed me. I swallowed hard, pushing back the memories, because he made my life a living hell. Su Sun's eyes widened, but I wouldn't share those humiliating experiences. Instead, I forced a laugh and changed course. "Besides," I added softly, "the person I truly care about is you." He didn't press further, just ducked his head with reddening cheeks and returned to his work. Seeing his uncertainty sparked something bold in me. I reached for his hand, my heart hammering. "Su Sun, life is too short for hesitation. Let me stay by your side, okay?" He froze for a moment before gently pulling his hand away, his neck flushing crimson. "Solve this math problem first," he mumbled. "It'll make my life less bitter." That answer gave me new energy. I threw myself into studying, and gradually, our relationship softened into a comfortable routine. He tutored me in math, and I brought him lunch every day. "Auntie Zhang," I called out one morning, "could you pack extra sweet and sour ribs in the blue thermal container and double the rice portion, twice as much as mine?" The housekeeper smiled knowingly. Of course. Young Master Fu must have quite the appetite. Boys his age usually do." "It's not for Fu Ran," I corrected sharply. "If he ate even a single grain of my rice, I'd have to call the police." "Oh? Then for whom?" Her eyes twinkled. "Don't worry, miss. I won't tell anyone." I hugged her, feeling light and happy. "Aunt Zhang, you're the best. Could you also double the bird's nest in the blue box? He studies so hard, he needs the nourishment." "A young man shouldn't be eating bird's nest," she chided gently. "I've prepared 8 treasure tea with fine ginseng for him instead." I beamed at her, my words dripping sweetness. In this life, I would make sure everything was different. "Oh, Aunt Zhang, you know exactly what he needs, and your cooking is simply incredible," I gushed, hugging her again. "I love you." "Always the dramatic one," she laughed, shooing me toward the door. "Now get to school." My careful attention to Su-sun's diet began showing results. The hollow cheeks that had worried me started filling out, and he no longer looked like he might disappear in a strong breeze. Every day, I watched him finish a bar of chocolate and a glass of milk, refusing to let him skip these small luxuries that replaced the greasy cafeteria food he used to survive on. His already impressive academic performance reached new heights. Even before the college entrance exams, prestigious universities were competing for him. As he continued tutoring me, my own grades transformed. Math, once my nemesis, became manageable, and soon he was helping me with other subjects too. My determination paid off as my scores climbed steadily upward. In this second chance at life, I was carving my own path. I knew what was coming: my father's eventual downfall. Such crises don't appear overnight. I'd seen the signs brewing since childhood. This time, I would be ready. I was building myself stronger, determined that in a decade, I would stand as Su-sun's equal. No matter how the world changed, no matter how the stars realigned, we would face it together. I wanted to meet him at the summit, but more than that, I wanted to climb there beside him. Our bond grew naturally, like a seedling reaching for sunlight. We developed the kind of understanding where words became unnecessary. After clearing up that misunderstanding, he resumed calling me Princess, a nickname that both warmed and puzzled me. "Why do you always call me that?" I asked him one day. He considered the question seriously before answering. "Remember the day you first offered me those sweet and sour ribs? You were like a princess in a fairy tale, saving the world from suffering. Despite your status, you showed such kindness." I laughed brightly, though inside I wondered. In my past life, I'd never made the first move toward him, yet he'd used that same nickname. But the past didn't matter anymore. This time would be different. Then came the day of University A's autonomous admission exam. I left briefly to use the restroom, and when I returned, Su-sun had vanished. A cold dread gripped my heart. My worst fears materialized in a narrow alley near the school. Fu Ran and Pei Pei had finally found their opportunity, the one they'd been denied while I kept close to Su-sun. Several thugs held him, while Fu Ran and Pei Pei took turns beating him. Su-sun's face was twisted in agony, his hands clutching his stomach as he crumpled to the ground. Despite his rapid, uneven breathing and the sweat beading on his forehead, he refused to cry out. "Damn," Pei Pei sneered, shaking out his fist. "This one's tough." Just as Pei Pei's fist was about to strike Su-sun again, I pulled out my phone. The movement caught his attention, and he turned toward me with malicious intent. "What's this? Miss Meng calling the police?" He stalked toward me, but I held my ground, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Don't you know who my uncle is at the police department?" As he reached for my phone, I switched tactics, my voice breaking into tearful desperation. "Hello, Dad. I'm in the alley by the school. Please help me." Pei-Pei's face drained of color. "Fu Ran, didn't you say her father was in Beijing?" "Even if he is," I snarled, "just try touching me and see what happens to your family's plans to go public." The approaching wail of police sirens scattered them like cockroaches in light. I rushed to Su Sun, helping him to his feet. Each wince of pain on his face felt like a knife in my heart. All the way to his home, guilt gnawed at me. "This is all because of me," I kept saying. "If you hadn't known me, they would have left you alone. If it weren't for me—" "Princess," Su Sun cut me off, his voice tired but warm. "That's the 100th time you've apologized." "Sorry, am I being annoying?" "And there's the 101st. I never imagined Su Sun would live in the medical staff quarters where I'd spent my childhood. The once vibrant community had fallen into disrepair. Most units now empty. Wu Yo loves candied haws just like his father. Such a sweet tooth. I've made chief physician, thanks to my senior colleague's recommendation. Her husband's quite impressive, reaching such heights at his age. But her drinking before surgeries worries me. No one can talk her out of it. On a brighter note, Su Chang's artwork is selling well. Our savings are growing, and Wu Yo keeps asking for a sibling. If only... I was so absorbed in reading that I didn't notice Su Sun sit beside me. I jumped, hastily wiping my tears, but before I could stammer an apology, he spoke. "I had it all once," he said softly. "A mother who healed people, a father who created beauty. I was their whole world." His voice carried no bitterness, just a quiet acceptance that made everything more heartbreaking. Then my mother died. He paused, his eyes distant. "You know how most children wish for their parents to stay in love forever? Not me. Every birthday since Mom died, I've wished for Dad to stop loving her. To stop loving her enough to remember he still had me. But heaven ignored those wishes. He kept loving her, loved her so much he gave up on me, gave up on living altogether." The calmness in his voice as he spoke of such pain made my tears fall faster. His mother had died from complications during a premature delivery, a medical accident. His father had blamed everything on Su Sun. "Disaster," he said, almost contemplatively. I looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "Su Sun, I would choose you even if the whole world stood against us, even if thousands cursed my name, even if I'm just a small page in your story, or a tiny ripple in the river of your life. I have to tell you something." Taking a deep breath, I met his gaze. "Do you know why I could decode that password? Because your mother taught me that nursery rhyme." His eyes lit up at the mention of his mother. "And my mother," I continued, watching his face carefully, "was the senior sister in your mother's diary." The color drained from his face. He stood frozen, like a statue in the falling snow. We remained there, silence growing between us as snow gathered on our shoulders. "Let's go home," I finally whispered. "Goodbye, Su Sun." I turned away, tears falling freely. On my 17th birthday, alone in the heavy snow, I made my wish to the heavens. Please let Su Sun live a safe and healthy life. In the days that followed, we reverted to our old patterns of distance. Though I couldn't bring myself to reach out, I still left chocolates on his desk daily. He neither ate them nor threw them away. That he still chose to sit beside me felt like both blessing and curse. I didn't dare hope for more. Winter melted into spring, and the college entrance exams loomed closer. Driven by desperate determination, my grades improved steadily. Math remained a challenge, but I had learned Su Sun's habits well. His red pen markings highlighted crucial problems, his notebooks a treasure trove of organized methods and common mistakes. His meticulous notes, never taken home, became my secret advantage. As I strengthened my weak points, the gap between our rankings narrowed. Outside, mallow flowers bloomed under the lengthening summer days, marking time's relentless march forward. The college entrance exam results arrived like a thunderclap. I ranked first in the school, but Susun's name was nowhere to be found. Top universities like Tsinghua and Peking tried desperately to reach him, even sending recruiters directly to our school. In secret, I moved money from home under Mrs. Zhang's name, a $1,000,000 scholarship for the top scholar. I knew he would need this seed money in the future. This time around, I couldn't bear to watch him slowly accumulate capital through exhausting work. My father's reaction was swift and brutal. When I told him I'd gambled away the $1,000,000, he whipped me until I couldn't leave my bed for days. My body was a canvas of scars, but I didn't regret it. Eventually, after stern warnings never to gamble again, he relented. After all, I was still his daughter. At the graduation dinner, I found courage in several bottles of alcohol. My feet carried me to Susun's apartment once again. When he came downstairs, his eyes sparkled with unspoken emotions, though hesitation held his tongue. Lightning split the overcast sky as I looked at his achingly familiar face. "Susun, I know you can't accept me, and that's okay. Just let me say what I need to say." He nodded silently at my tear-filled plea. "In the future, please take care of yourself. No more surviving on pickles and fermented tofu. You need proper nutrition. No matter how busy you get with studies or work, promise me you'll get enough sleep." My voice grew more urgent. "And most importantly, after college, get regular checkups, especially your liver." "Meng Yu," he cut me off, his voice cool and distant. "Let's go to hell together." Before I could process his words, warmth pressed against my lips. When reality caught up with me, I clutched him tightly, as if he might disappear. Fat raindrops began to fall, quickly becoming a torrential curtain. "Princess, it's raining," he whispered in my ear. I gazed at the misty cityscape, feeling like I was living in a dream. The rain grew heavier, but I couldn't let go. It had taken all my strength and every bit of luck in this lifetime to hold him like this. 30 years old, a decade later. My parents met the same fate I remembered. Despite all my efforts over those 10 years, I couldn't change my mother's alcoholism. The path my father chose remained unchanged, like a river flowing inevitably toward the sea. When I watched the video of his confession after his arrest, I saw no trace of genuine remorse in his eyes, only a calm acceptance of his fate, like a man who had long ago made peace with his decisions. I've come to understand that no matter how many times I might relive this life, Susun's battle with cancer still came. But this time, we caught it early, a small mercy born from years of my watchful care. For a decade, I had been his silent guardian, ensuring he maintained a strict exercise routine, went to bed early, and rose with the sun. When the time came for surgery to remove part of his liver, his body was strong enough to endure it. The doctors were amazed at how quickly he bounced back, though they warned us about the possibility of the cancer returning. I remember smiling at their concern, a confident, determined smile. Not on my watch, I thought. Those cancer cells won't stand a chance. Susun, my dear friend, when life pushed you to the edge of that metaphorical cliff, I made a silent vow. I would sit beside you there, watching the mists roll by, our shoulders touching, our spirits intertwined. From that moment on, we became inseparable, in life and whatever lay beyond. Looking back, my story with Meng Yu, whom I called Princess, began with our first encounter. My grandmother used to scavenge through the trash bins in the wealthy neighborhood. Even their garbage held more value than our treasures. That fateful day, when security caught her and pushed her to the ground, my world stopped. I ran until my lungs burned, following the desperate call to find her crumpled form. As I helped my grandmother home, we passed Meng Yu's house. It was like stepping into a different world, a birthday party in full swing, the house glowing like a fairy tale castle. Through the windows, I saw her surrounded by family and friends, her smile outshining the decorative lights. There I stood, a shadow at the gates of paradise, watching the princess in her realm. Our paths crossed again at school, where her boyfriend, trying to humiliate me, made her serve food onto my plate. All I had was the free pickled vegetables from the cafeteria, a stark reminder of the gulf between our worlds. I saw the hesitation in her eyes, but what surprised me was the small act of kindness that followed. She left me a piece of chocolate. Such a simple gesture, yet it created ripples in my life that would echo for years to come. The final twist in our tale came when I saw her again, no longer the pristine princess, but selling sweet potatoes on the street, her clothes stained with dirt. Her former friends walked by, whispering mockeries while she endured it all with quiet dignity. Seeing her there, so changed, yet somehow stronger, made my heart ache in ways I never expected. The truth about her family weighed heavily on my heart, especially knowing her mother was the same unscrupulous doctor who had operated on my mother and sister. But something inside me shifted as I thought about it. I had lived through the suffocating darkness of my father's misdirected hatred. Why should I let that same poison spread to her? So I opened my home to her, choosing friendship over vengeance. My heart overflowed with love for her, but I kept it hidden, afraid that my feelings would frighten away my delicate princess. In the moments we shared, I discovered what it meant to truly feel alive. My career soared, showing me both the dazzling heights and shadowy depths of success. The world revealed itself as a tapestry of brilliance and bloodshed, but I remained on its edges, a piece of duckweed drifting on life's current, a soul searching for its place. Then she appeared again, and suddenly I had roots, an anchor in the storm. She became my personal sun, her presence warming the cold corners of my existence. In her light, I found purpose, a reason to embrace each new day. She was more than just a person. She was my path home, my journey back to myself. I had dreamed of the perfect moment to declare my love, waiting for the storms to pass and skies to clear. But fate had other plans, cutting short our time together. Now I'm left with just one wish. If life grants me another chance, my beloved princess, would you find your way to me sooner? Perhaps then, we could write a different ending to our story.